Every once in a while, a new telescope shows up that makes me stop and say, wait, how is this even a telescope? Hi everyone, welcome back to the Space Koala. My name is Lutza, and today we're talking about the tiniest smart telescope I've ever used, the Dwarf Mini. And before we go anywhere, this is not a sponsored video. I bought the telescope with my own money. I ordered it the day pre-orders opened, mostly because I was too curious for my own good. Now, if you've been here for a while, you may remember that a year ago I reviewed the Dwarf 3, but this year Dwarflab, the company behind the telescope, looked at it and said, what if we made it even smaller? And that's how we ended up with this thing. So today I'm going to walk you through what this little telescope can do. We'll compare it directly to the Dwarf 3. We'll place it against the competitors, and we'll go through the specs. We'll test it during the day and then, of course, the night. I've already used it under city skies, under dark skies, in alt-azimuth mode, in equatorial mode. I even pushed it to really long exposures to see what would happen. Some of the results surprised me, some things behave as expected, and yes, there are a couple of hardware quirks that we'll talk about later. But the short version is this is the smallest portable telescope I've ever used. But the question remains whether portable means actually useful. So let's get into it. Before we jump into the actual specs of the telescope, I think it helps to see where the Dwarf Mini actually sits within the current landscape of smart telescopes, because the market is growing fast and every model approaches astrophotography a little bit differently. The most direct comparison is, of course, the older sibling, the Dwarf 3. The Dwarf 3 used the familiar dwarf horizontal barrel design with both lenses sitting next to each other. It is compact, it is capable, and last year I was surprised by how much it could do. The Dwarf Mini, though, shifts to this new layout we now see on most modern smart telescopes. There's the vertical arm that rotates up and down, and then there's the base that rotates freely horizontally. Now, in terms of its spot on the market, the most relevant competitor is the Seestar S30. S30 has very similar specs. It does include more in the box and is designed as a more ready-to-use package. The Dwarf Mini, on the other hand, is more bare bones. You need to get your own tripod and maybe a small protective case, but in exchange you get something smaller and lighter that can also do Milky Way shots. So with that in mind, let's get into what the Dwarf Mini actually offers under the hood. It uses a 30mm aperture with 150mm of focal length, which makes it an f5 telephoto system. That is a reasonable combination for a compact astrophotography device. It is small enough to keep everything lightweight, but just large enough to let you resolve larger galaxies, nebulae, and star clusters with their structure. You also get the wide-angle camera, which covers a roughly 50-degree field of view. This is the one you'll use for Milky Way shots or simply finding your target before switching to the telephoto lens. The lens arm moves up and down, and the base rotates a full 360 degrees. Another change about the base is that the USB-C port is no longer on the base like it used to be on the Dwarf 3, which is actually a step back because you now have a risk of tangling cables if you are using an external power source. So this now aligns the Dwarf with all the other smart scopes on the market in this sense. In terms of the camera, the Dwarf Mini uses a low-ish resolution, high-sensitivity sensor, the IMX622. The final images are 1080p, so that's about 2 megapixels. This is lower resolution than many other smart telescopes on the market. You are not buying this to make huge prints, though the final resolution can be improved through mosaics. The Mini also includes a set of built-in filters. You have a dark shutter filter for shooting internal dark frames easily. You have an astro filter for broadband deep sky objects, and you have a dual band filter for emission targets like nebulae. You also have the external solar filter that I have mounted here for shooting pictures of the sun. The official exposure limit communicated on the website is 90 seconds, but on my unit, it actually goes up to 120 seconds. The internal battery is 7,000 milliamp hours, which translates to about 4 hours of deep sky imaging on a single charge. If you want to go longer, you can always plug it into an external power source via the provided USB-C cable. The Mini supports dark frames which will help you reduce thermal noise. And while you cannot take your own flat frames, the telescope comes with a set pre-installed in the factory, and that helps with any issues of uneven illumination. So those were the essentials. Next, let's see how the Dwarf Mini behaves during daytime, because that's where some of the technical mechanical quirks of the device start showing up. The first thing we notice is how smoothly and quickly it moves. The vertical arm glides up and down, and the base rotates freely. The wide-angle camera is your framing tool. It gives you a big overview of the scene. It is somewhat useful for panoramas, and it is how you line up your shots before switching to the telephoto lens. So on my unit, the wide-angle and the telephoto lenses are not 100% aligned. So the center of the telephoto lens doesn't coincide with the center of the wide-angle view. It is manageable, but it is worth noting, especially if you want to find a fast moving subjects. Then I tested solar imaging, which is where the included solar filter becomes useful. Once the filter is attached and the Mini finds the sun quickly, exposure adjusts well, tracking stays stable, and the Mini performs live stacking on the sun, and by the way also on the moon, so surface details become clearer as the stack grows. Finally, the telephoto autofocus is excellent. Whether I pointed it at a distant mountain, trees, buildings, or clouds, it snapped into focus quickly and reliably every time. So daytime testing already gives you a good understanding of the device. It is very fast, reliable, a couple of quirks that you'll learn to live with. Now that we've seen how it behaves during the day, let's move to nighttime astrophotography. Nighttime is really where the Dwarf Mini really has to show what it can do. I started my test with just alt azimuth mode, so just like this, it's very easy. You just place it on a tripod, you select deep sky. In the app, you choose a target and it gets to work. There isn't much setup involved. Under light polluted city skies, I begin with short 10-second exposures. The live stack worked smoothly. The app updates the preview every few frames, and you slowly see the structure building up over time. Once I moved under dark skies, I switched to equatorial mode. If you're new to this, equatorial mode is simply a tracking method where the telescope compensates for Earth's rotation so that the stars stay still in the frame even during long exposures. To enable it, I mounted the Mini on the Move Should Move wedge. I pointed it roughly north, I tilted it to my latitude, and I started the polar alignment routine. The Mini walks you through adjusting the wedge or ball head. It takes a couple minutes maybe. With the equatorial mode active, I began by testing the wide-angle lens. This mode is only available on equatorial tracking. The result is usable for documenting constellations and showing the wider sky. I stacked a few pictures. You can see Cygnus and Orion, but the stars appear a bit large. This could be due to the resolution of the lens or imperfect focus. You cannot adjust the focus of the wide-angle lens. After that, I moved to the main reason you choose a device like this: telephoto deep sky imaging in equatorial mode. I captured the Andromeda Galaxy, the Pleiades, the Orion Nebula, and the Horsehead Nebula. The telephoto lens clearly is the star of the system. Autofocus works reliably, but manual focus is also available if you want it. For me personally, the most notable part of the whole experience was the exposure time. So even though the specifications on the website say 90 seconds, my unit actually allowed for 120, and to my surprise, it actually worked. With the proper alignment, the tracking stayed steady enough that the stars remain around, and you gain meaningful signal on fainter targets if you use longer exposures. Now let's talk about the app, because the Mini relies heavily on software. The app is quite straightforward. You pick your mode, you choose your target, you adjust the exposure and gain if you want to, and start live stacking. The basics are all where you would expect them to be. Now enter Stellar Studio, which is the built-in processing tool inside the app. Once you're done with imaging, you can open the image in Stellar Studio and you can do your post-processing directly on your phone or iPad. There's a fully automated process, and then there's a manual mode where you can adjust each of contrast, brightness, noise reduction, all those things, and star shapes. You can even generate a starless version. Of course, this is not meant to replace advanced astro imaging processing software such as PixInsight, but it lets you finish an image completely on your phone, which is kind of on brand with such a travel-oriented device. Then in the app, you also have Megastack, which lets you restack images of the same subject from several nights, which is really cool. I also like how the app handles calibration frames. The Mini supports dark frames, and the app keeps a library of all the darks you've captured organized by exposure time, gain, and temperature, so you know if you have to repeat the step or not if your settings match. So that's it about the application functionality-wise. Usability-wise, it works quite reliably when imaging. There are a few improvements that I would suggest. A main UI polish. There are some pop-ups and little tabs and messages that just appear all the time without being needed. Overall, the app is functional and reliable, and Stellar Studio adds convenience. So after having spent quite a few nights with the Dwarf Mini, a couple of things stood out. Obviously, the biggest strength or selling point is the size. How good the equatorial mode works is also a huge plus for me. Those really long subs make a noticeable difference under dark skies. It's a shame that there's no panorama mode, which is something you used to have on the Dwarf 3, which was really fun. The telescope does have its quirks and downsides. So on my unit, there is a loose screw or two rattling inside. You can hear it when you move the telescope. It hasn't affected the performance so far. Eventually, I will probably just open it up and see what's happening, but I wanted to try it as it arrived from the factory. Also, because the telescope is affordable, around $400, some accessories are just not included. So there's no case, there's no tripod. Overall, the Dwarf Mini is very capable in EQ mode, strong in telephoto, modest in wide-angle photo. It is okay for solar and lunar imaging, and the app works reliably. So what do we think about this telescope? If you want something compact that you can take anywhere without planning, something that doesn't require cables or computer or a dedicated setup, then the Dwarf Mini could be an option. If your main interest is telephoto astrophotography, galaxies, clusters, brighter nebulae, the Mini performs well in its size and price category. Where the Mini is less ideal, in my opinion, is if your primary focus is wide field sky photography. You can do it with a wide lens, but this is where I'd keep my eye maybe on the upcoming Seestar S30 Pro, which we also don't know how it is yet, but maybe just wait to see. Or potentially go in a completely different direction and just get a camera on a star tracker. But for a compact telephoto smart telescope that you can throw in a backpack, the Mini is compelling. At around $400, it is one of the most accessible EQ-capable smart telescopes on the market. You do need the tripod and the wedge for long exposure, so the overall cost is higher, but the core device remains affordable in line with alternatives. Long story short, if you want a miniature telescope that is capable and simple to use, this is a good option. If wide field imaging is your priority, another device may serve you better, but for the intended purpose and price, the Dwarf Mini performs as advertised. I'll put the links to the Dwarf Mini itself, the Move Shoot Move wedge, as well as my favorite tripod in the description. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. It supports the channel, and I'm curious to hear what you all think about the Dwarf Mini. Would you buy it, and would you buy it over the Dwarf 3? Or are you planning to wait and see how the Seestar S30 Pro performs? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, I wish you clear skies.